I grew up watching every single 80s ninja movie that you could possibly think of. Pray for Death, Revenge of the Ninja. Sho Kosugi was like my hero back then. I was just drawn to the whole ninja aura. They did a demonstration at the park across the street from my parents' house. Master Ho was, young back then. He's an impressive individual, so I begged my parents to take me down to the studio and sign up, and I started doing Kuk Sool back then at about 10 years old. I grew up all through the rest of my life really loving that disciplined environment. Wushu was one of the most challenging things that I've ever tried to do. Everybody that was in the club was dedicated. We would train twice a week at night, and then on the weekends we'd meet up and we would run the stadiums. We would run the hill up State College right there around campus to condition our bodies. It was fun, a lot of fun. My love and enthusiasm for martial arts has never changed throughout my whole life. I've always respected it and loved the training process, no matter what martial art it is.
What's up, Eric? How we doing?
Doing good?
You miss training?
Yes, I do. I do. It's been a while.
Yeah, but you're still doing your hockey, right?
Still playing hockey 2 times a week usually.
Mm-hmm. And yoga too, hot yoga?
Doing yoga probably about 4 or 5 times a week if I can.
Mm-hmm. And doing stairs too?
That's the solace. I wouldn't be able to still play hockey if I wasn't doing yoga. There's no way.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yoga is real good for recovery.
Yep.
So
it's good for recovery, and it's good for long-term joint health, range of motion, tendon health, all that stuff. So.
Well, I appreciate you coming here. Thanks for being a part of the series that I have covering different martial artists. We had Master Ho on first, so you're the second.
I'm honored.
So we got you now. So just start out by telling us where you grew up, where you were born.
So I grew up in Anaheim, close to Anaheim Hills, literally right across the street from Yorba Regional Park, for those that may know the area. We moved into that house when I was barely 1 year old and went to school around there, went to Esperanza High School, graduated in '94. And as a kid was just super active, skateboarding, every sport you can imagine. We grew up on a cul-de-sac with a bunch of other families, so we were out in the street playing we were making up sports. I mean, going over to the park and messing around, playing ditch 'em and tag and tackle football and you name it, we were at it. So got into skateboarding as a young kid and was heavy into that until I broke my shoulder. And still did a little bit after that, but not as hardcore as I was before. And that was kind of a transitionary period. I was my last year of junior high going into high school, and was still practicing martial arts at that time as well, and playing hockey at the same time. So I was doing a lot of stuff as a kid. Very, very active childhood.
So kind of tell me your origin story of how you got started with martial arts. Everyone has kind of like a specific moment when their eyes lit up. It's different, of course, if we're adults versus kids, but
Sure.
Me watching anime, everything like that, and then seeing the Kuk Sool studio, there were certain moments that really got to me. So what was sort of your moment? What's that whole beginning to how you started, and how old were you when you started?
So growing up in the 80s, if you're a film genre buff, 80s ninja movies are freaking a genre in of itself, and they're phenomenal. So I grew up watching every single 80s ninja movie that you could possibly think of. Pray for Death, Revenge of the Ninja. Sho Kosugi was like my hero back then. Obviously Bruce Lee as well. I watched all the old school 70s Bruce Lee movies as well. But I was just drawn to the whole ninja aura. Every ninja movie had a scene where they laid out all the weapons when they were getting ready to go to battle, and you're just like going over the shuriken and the nunchucks and all that kind of stuff, the ninja toe. So that was just nostalgia for me, and as a kid I was just drawn to it. And then when I was probably around 10 years old, the Kuk Sool Master Ha, they did a demonstration at the park across the street from my parents' house, and we didn't know what was going on. We just saw this commotion over at the park, and I told my mom, I was like, I want to go check it out. So we go over there, and it's Kuxul doing a demonstration, Master Hud doing his thing. Master Hud was, young back then and very impressive. He did his signature, backflip in the glass, rubbing the glass all over his face and his body, and just, Master Hud, so he's just like, he's an impressive individual. So, I was instantly drawn to it, and I, begged my parents to take me down to the studio and sign up, and I started doing Kuxul back then at about 10 years old. Mike, we were good friends since elementary school. He started soon after that, and we just kind of grew up through martial arts together under Master Hub.
Was he in your same cul-de-sac too?
No, he lived down the street, closer to the grocery store that was down the street from my house.
Okay, but he was part of kind of that group where you guys would like invent shit to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was interesting because, there was a bunch of people on our cul-de-sac that were younger than me. My brother's 3 years younger than me. My brother didn't have most of the other kids didn't have any inclination towards martial arts or fantasy and any of that type of stuff. And so I had Mike and me and a couple other kids. That was like one of my group's friends, and we'd play role-playing games, and we would train, and we'd go basically do parkour before parkour was parkour. We'd be climbing up trees and jumping out of trees, running across roofs and doing flips and stuff like that. And then the other side was just like athletes. My brother and all the kids on the block, we would play football, baseball, hockey, street hockey, all that kind of stuff, soccer, nonstop. So if I wasn't hanging out with Mike and the, martial arts crew or that type of scene, I was doing sports and just hanging out with like the athlete kids, so it was a good outlet. Always had something to do.
So going back to when you first started training with Master Hub, what was your experience training under him? He was your first instructor and you were a kid, so you had nothing else to compare it to, but especially now looking back, what was that experience like training under him? He's a special guy, and what was that training like as well?
At first, being 10 years old, walking into the studio, a bunch of older students there, obviously more experienced than myself, it was very intimidating. I was a really shy kid at that time. I was probably shy all the way up until middle of high school, even though I was training martial arts through my teen years and stuff like that. Just my nature, I guess. But it was very intimidating. But after, I told myself this is something I really want to do, so I leapt in there, and, even though I was, intimidated and maybe a little bit afraid, I just jumped in and started doing what I could do. And Master Hud doesn't let up, he's pretty hardcore, even when you're young. So, we would be getting yelled at before class. Master Hud would say, you need to create energy, make energy, and he'd like tell us to jump around and start stretching and do all kinds of stuff like that, do push-ups and stuff. So we were doing all that kind of stuff, and I just followed along, and then we'd stretch. And they had, I remember them being like 3-ring binder like sheets, like cut like the 3-ring binder sheets off of the binder, and they'd put them under your feet. Mike says they were like, what did he say? They were like X-ray sheets or something like that. I can't remember. But anyways, like a plastic sheet, right? And you would have to put those under your feet and do the splits, and then Master Hud would come around and stand on your hips. And you would just be in pain, dude. It was painful and awesome at the same time, I chalk it up to the fact that I come from a generation where I got disciplined by my parents. I got spanked with a belt, I got yelled at. I got disciplined, which doesn't happen anymore for kids these days. Training martial arts is much in the same way. Martial arts is not only about self-discipline, but it's about being disciplined by your master when you fuck up, you know what I mean? Or when you don't have the drive to push yourself, your master's there to freaking tell you. It's like drill sergeant, right? Tell you got to get this done. Why are you slacking? Stuff like that. So I didn't know it probably at that age, but I grew up all through the rest of my life really loving that disciplined environment where I could go to a class that had, whether it was martial arts or whatever, I could go to a martial arts class that had a master or an instructor that would hold you accountable. Or I could play team sports, like I was playing hockey my whole life. And the coach, if we screwed up in a game or we lost the game and we played like shit, the coach is there at the next practice screaming at you, making you skate ladder drills and all kinds of stuff. And I just loved that, I loved that discipline and being held accountable and the work that came along with it. The conditioning and improving your body, improving your coordination, improving your self, so to speak. So,
did you find that hockey and martial arts really complemented each other in terms of the training? Did you find a lot of similarities? Because you still do hockey to this day.
It's funny you asked that question because I talk about this to my friends all the time. And most of my friends, they don't do martial arts or play sports. So I'm sitting there rambling, talking about something, and they're probably going over the head, or they're just like, yeah, Eric's talking about this BS again. But I'm a goalie for hockey. I'm an ice hockey goalie. I've been since I was a young kid. And the reason why I was attracted to the position of playing goalie is because you're basically like a ninja. You're in net, like, and you have to react on the spot to block the puck. And you don't know what the guy's going to do. You don't know where he's going to shoot it. You don't know if he's going to pass it across. And your reaction time, your agility, your speed, your freaking, decision making, how to analyze what's the play that's going on in front of you, is much the same as fighting. Having an opponent standing in front of you. What's your opponent doing? Watch your opponent's movements. Trying to freaking figure out his tells and do different things like that, and you have to react to that. It's like Bruce Lee says, like Jeet Kune Do, right? The way of the intercepting fist. As something's coming at you, you have to adapt and accept it and do what you need to do to attack back, counterattack, or subdue your opponent. Playing goalie in hockey is the same way. When something's coming at you, you have to adapt and make the right move to stop the puck and subdue the play and make sure they don't score a goal. So I always equated the two, the physical skills that are required for martial arts and the physical skills required to play goalie in hockey were much in the same to me. You're always working on reaction time. You're always working on reflex. You're always working on agility and speed. You're working on flexibility. You're working on, strength, and power. So that's why I fell in love with both of those things. I had two passions growing up in life from the time I was like 10 years old. It was martial arts and hockey. So,
yeah, I think that it's like that Musashi quote where it's like, once you understand the way, you see it in everything.
Yeah.
And those were both loves of yours, and they're physical. And I was just picturing in my head the reaction time too for goalies, like with the puck, because you don't know till probably the last second your brain registers that it's coming at you.
Absolutely.
So you had both of those things going on. You were very active. One thing I've learned as an instructor is how important it is to have a good environment with training partners. Sure. So what was your environment like at Master House Studio? I see some of those old VHS tapes of all the black belts training together. You had people like Doug, obviously my instructor, Mike Dunchuk too. So what was it like? What was sort of the day-to-day training like with having an environment of guys like that were higher level and you guys can elevate your level together?
It was awesome. It was intimidating, motivating, and humbling all at the same time, right? Like I wasn't the best martial artist in the class, but as I grew, I got better and better and better, and I became a pretty good martial artist. But there were definitely students that were better than me, and you have to kind of fight that inner battle, right? Like there's a stigma, especially for myself growing up. I never wanted to lose a fight, never wanted to lose a sparring match. I put a lot of pressure on myself, but obviously I lost sometimes. I won some, I lost some. And that just later on you learn that that's just a fact of life. But fighting that mental battle is also part of growing as a martial artist and as a human being, right? So when you're going up against somebody who's better than you, you got to like calm that part of your mind down and just revert to your training and try to figure out how to make those right moves and do what's necessary to win the fight or learn from the fight. It's a win-win either way. Even when you lose, you learn what you did wrong and you improve. So the environment was great because if you were the best, then you wouldn't be able to grow, right? So being young and being in the middle of the pack there, I felt was the perfect opportunity for me to grow as a martial artist and as an athlete. So
I saw on some of the VHS tapes they were doing some pretty interesting drills, and some of it those Kyutugi style drills that Mike taught his students to. They're pretty interesting. I saw from the videos even like the forehead conditioning with
Oh yeah.
the punches and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what were some exercises that you guys did a lot that you actually felt were just really good for self-defense and developing your skills overall?
The forehead drill was one of them. The front of the forehead is the hardest part of the human body, right? So you could sacrifice the forehead on a jab and come over with the right cross and use that as a counterattack. And we used to drill that a lot. That's one of the techniques that I actually really liked in the Gaktugi part of the system. And we used to put our feet inside of a tire and box where you couldn't get away from your opponent, and we'd just literally be boxing it out, close combat, guard up, head movement, and trying to find your opportunities to figure out how you can take over control, And when I tested for my black belt at the old studio, there was a little doorway. It was like an alcove doorway that went out the back, and Master Ha put me in there and had two people just pounding on me, and I just had to survive, which was awesome, Later on in life, I was living in Taiwan studying, and we ended up getting jumped by these gangster dudes, and I had these two guys that were bigger than me freaking came up and started freaking a fight with me, and I revert back to my training, Cover up, make sure you don't get hit critically, don't go to the ground, freaking block and throw punches and move, and came out alive. Got some good shots in too, so you know what I mean? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it ingrains in you,
We all have that camaraderie training under Master Ha. Everybody that was in that studio knows the power and the aura of Master Ha, and just the drive that he would instill in you to just excel and train hard and be a good martial artist. I mean, it's great to know that like Master Ha's students from way back then still respect him and still care about him. Master Ha himself has had his ups and downs in life too. So it's good that he's getting love from the students that he put so much time and energy into.
And if you were a student that maybe in life, things weren't great at home, he could really be that sort of figure. And no one's perfect, no teacher's perfect, but he had a lot of good values.
He was definitely that figure for a handful of kids, for sure.
That's important. That's good. So you were there in formidable years. You started at 10, and you said was it around 17, 18? Was that the time when you...
Yeah, I think that's about the time that I really kind of just took a hiatus. It wasn't planned. It just kind of ended up that way. I started playing more hockey around that time. My whole life is just kind of cyclical. I would go from hockey to martial arts and then around and back. And there's times where I was doing both, and there's times in my life where I was just doing one or the other. But I would always come back around in one way or another. For example, right now, mostly because of COVID and injuries, I'm not doing any martial arts right now. Before COVID, I was training Wing Chun for, I was about 5 years when COVID hit that I was at that Wing Chun school, and that was an awesome experience. But I just haven't gotten back into it yet, mostly because of injuries and my knee surgery and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the question was, but, that's basically how it's always been. Those were my two passions in life, and I just kind of balanced those out and went back and forth between both of them, and still do today.
So around that time, about 17, 18, you went to your more of like hockey phase, and then obviously it's a big transition. You get out of high school, college, everything like that. And then Master Ha's school, he had two different ones, correct? And then it closed down as well, and he was at Tiger Yang's place. So you did mention that you had kind of more of an informal training experience right after Kuksul, where you would meet up with your buddies that you trained with. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So after getting into college, I spent a couple years, adjusting to college life. Made up a lot of friends, got into the party scene, fraternity and stuff like that, which was also great, But I always sensed that something was missing. I was partying a lot. Obviously, I was still going to school and doing okay with my grades and everything. But something was missing. I wasn't doing martial arts and I wasn't playing hockey for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years or something like that. And so I went back and started trying to figure out how I could get back into training. And that's when, I can't remember how it happened, but I met up with Randy and Joe, who were old students of Master Ha's as well. Can't remember how we came in contact with one another. I might have actually walked into Tiger Yang's place thinking, I had done Kuk Sool, Korean martial art, Tiger Yang's place was huge and stuff like that. Let me go just check it out. And may have ran into him that way. And so I ended up started training with them. They were teaching classes over there on like in one of the side rooms for Master He as part of continuing Kuk Sool with more of a focus. That at that time it was more of a focus on just strictly Gaktugi, more of the boxing, kickboxing part of Kuk Sool. We weren't really doing any Hapkido. We weren't doing any weapons or anything like that. It was just hand-to-hand combat stuff. And as well as training Kuk Sool most of your life as well. Gaktugi is very kind of similar to like a mix of American kickboxing and Muay Thai a little bit. You know what I mean? So, we did a lot of that, and we did a lot of drills too, just kicking drills, combination drills, heavy bag drills, focus mitts, and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun. And we started getting more and more students coming in, and so then I started helping Randy and Joe teach a little bit. And then there was a falling out with Tiger Yang. I think Tiger Yang and Master He, and then that kind of just came to a halt. And so after that, I followed Randy over to this small place around the corner from there that he started doing some strictly Muay Thai training. And I trained with him over there until maybe for like a year or so, and then he started getting into like actually competing and going into the ring and stuff like that, which I didn't have any interest in. I just wanted to train, and I don't remember how that kind of fell out. It just kind of came to an end. I think he moved from that school, and then I never went back. And then at that point, soon after that is when I met my buddies Jesse, Phil, John, another guy named Mike, and stuff like that, and started training Wushu.
How long did you do Wushu altogether?
So long ago now, like 25 years ago. It's hard to think back the exact dates, but I want to guess. I went to go study in Taiwan in 2001, and I was training probably from 98 up until that point, like really hard. So a little over 3 years, probably about 3.5 years, training like really hardcore. And then I went to go study abroad, and when I came back, then I just kind of trained more leisurely. Like we weren't training at the school anymore. We were more just training, me, Phil, and John and Jesse and some other guys. We were just training at the club workouts that we had over at Cal State Fullerton. But still training pretty hard. And then it was around that time also, we started just having these meetups. And actually Master Mike would let us use his studio when he was over on Harbor. And we had a bunch of the Wushu guys, a bunch of like mixed martial arts guys, and we would just go meet up at the studio, and we'd do like an hour of grappling and an hour of striking, drilling and sparring both, and it was a good time. And I did that all the way up until I broke my leg.
That was through wrestling, right?
Yeah, I was wrestling this guy named Mel. I don't know if you ever met Mel. He's a little wiry guy, dude, but he was quick and like a little monkey, like climbing all over you. But him and I both tried to throw each other at the same time, and I tried to counter. And we both ended up going to the ground, and I was pivoting on this leg, and I ended up pivoting all the way back with my weight on this leg, and my ankle turned around 180 degrees. You heard it pop in the studio. So
but that was your leg.
It was the fibula, yeah.
Oh.
So I ended up having to have surgery. I had a plate and 7 screws put in my leg. Took me about, I want to say about 3. I was running probably about after 3 months. Again.
Wow.
But it wasn't without pain. That metal plate was pretty painful for a while, and then the pain went away. And then later on in life, about 12 years after the surgery, it just started to ache really bad. And so when I had my knee surgery a year and a half ago, I had the doctor take the plate out, and that was one of the best moves that I ever did.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, during the surgery, the plate had been in there for like almost 15 years. There was bone grown over the implant, so the doctor literally had to chisel the bone out of my leg so he could get the freaking plate out.
Oh my God.
The recovery from my knee was virtually painless. My leg swelled up like 3 times the size, and it took a long time for that to like go back to normal, where I could like actually start running and jumping and stuff like that again.
You've had a lot of injuries, Eric,
Yep.
and some nasty ones. If we rewind a little bit with your with Wushu, just to mention, when I got involved in stunts, and I met a lot of guys that had a wushu background. A lot of them knew you, and a lot of them had trained with you. People like Tommy Lang and Johnny Yang, and you were very well respected. And they also really made the effort to tell me like that your skills were very high level, and
I appreciate that. I miss those guys. Those we trained quite a while together over at Wushu Link and at Cal State Fullerton. So I'm glad that they're doing the deal. You know, I'm glad they're doing well. I'm glad they're in the business and they're still training. That's freaking awesome.
yeah. So you started at that place in Walnut, right? And that was
Yep.
your friend Jesse. You met
Wushu
him.
Link, yeah. So
Wushu
the
Link.
place originally, when I met Jesse at a house party, and he comes up, and I was like I had mentioned to you before. I was sitting talking martial arts with a group of guys at a table, and we were at my buddy's house actually in Yorba Linda, and Jesse just comes over. Never seen the guy before, and he's just like, "You guys talking about martial arts?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I do martial arts." I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" He's like, "I do wushu." And I was like, "Oh man, I've been trying to get back into training, and I was trying to debate if I want to do like wushu or Wing Chun or something different or something like that." And so he's like, "Oh yeah, we got a school." So that original school was over in Cerritos, and it was just a tiny little hole in the wall. And Philip Chen was training there, Jesse was training there, our buddy John was training there, and then a few other guys. But it wasn't the ideal spot to train, and luckily the owner of the company ended up moving it over to Walnut to a big warehouse space, and we had an awesome training ground. I mean, it was just like a whole warehouse, mirrors on all the walls, carpet down. Although there was no padding, it was just carpet. So we're doing like wushu jump kicks on basically carpet over concrete, but we were young, so it didn't matter, you know. But yeah, it was a freaking good time, dude. We trained for many years over there. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, D.Y. Sao once told me that he was very athletic growing up, and he never felt too challenged athletically. And what kept him stuck with wushu, that he wanted to be excellent at it, was that it challenged him. It wasn't easy. So, you know, you had already had probably 10 years by that time, 10 years plus of martial arts experience. So what did wushu, like, what did you get out of training wushu? What was it for you? Was it just fun? Was it, you know, because you did it very seriously.
Again, it was the discipline. It was the discipline, the work, the conditioning, all of that stuff, you know. Practicing martial arts, for me, I've never been like the type to really want to fight all the time. Like I never had the desire to like get into the octagon or the ring or anything like that. But I loved martial arts as a method of fitness and a method of growing as an individual. So it didn't matter if I was training Kuk Sul or if I was doing gyaktugi or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu or wushu or whatever it was. I just loved that method of challenging my body and staying in shape. And wushu was one of the most challenging things that I've ever tried to do in terms of flexibility, strength, stamina, speed, all of that stuff. And when I was at the height of my wushu training, I had all of those aspects of physical fitness were at its peak. So it was awesome. I mean, you've seen the wushu guys, they can touch their forehead to their feet and stuff like that. There was one point in time where I could do that, you know? Jumping, my vertical jump was higher than it had ever been when I was training wushu. We used to do tons of plyometrics. And that I just loved that part of conditioning and the training. Obviously, the actual art of it and the movements and stuff like that were also awesome. I mean, I love that part of it too. Just jumping in the air and doing jumping spin kicks, jumping front kicks, aerials, different things like that was just, I mean, that's what you think about when you think about ninjas and you think about martial arts as a kid, I mean, like that's what you want to do. So training wushu, even though it's not a combat art, it was the most physically demanding martial art that I've ever done. So over at Wushu Link, our coach, his name was Wang Zhentian. He was brought over by the owner of the company from China. He was part of the Nanjing national wushu team. His skills were excellent. I used to practice rope dart and flying meteor, and that was one of his specialties. So that was a lot of fun. He had a lot of knowledge, which was great. You basically break the movements down and you train sections and stuff like that, and then they go in and they correct your posture, they correct your speed, they tell you where you need to loosen up and where you need to speed up and slow down. And we just did that over and over and over again. Philip Chen, who was one of my best friends, he was on the national team and ended up going and competing in a couple times. I think Hong Kong was one and Brazil was another one. Actually got a class on the schedule in the kinesiology department for a credit. Phil got wushu as a class on the schedule. And then in addition to the class, we had the club that was ancillary to the class. So anybody who took the class and they wanted to get involved in the club met up after hours twice a week to train. When we were running, it was great. Everybody that was in the club was dedicated. We would train with the club twice a week at night, and then on the weekends we'd meet up and we would run the stadiums. We would run the hill up State College right there around campus. We would do plyometric training and stuff like that just to condition our bodies. It was fun, a lot of fun. Another good buddy of mine from childhood, Jason Salgado, who Mike also knows, we all grew up together, and he had been training at this Wing Chun school called West Coast Wing Chun. Shout out to Master Brian Talbot and all the guys over there. I miss training over there as well. I signed up almost instantly. The way their school's set up is if you want to become a student there, you have to go through their boot camp. It's a 3-month boot camp. And it's pretty challenging. You got to do conditioning. Like I was telling you before, Wing Chun is very scientific. There's a lot of theory, there's a lot of principles and stuff like that go with it. Every time you go to class, like there's actually like a whole chalk talk part of learning process where you're learning all the principles. You got to memorize those principles that go along with the movements throughout the 3 forms of Wing Chun, Silam Tao, Chum Kyu, and Buji. Each section you would get, we didn't have belts, right? But you would have like a yellow shirt, a blue shirt, and a red shirt as you moved through those ranks. And the curriculum within each one of those stages was massive. I ended up getting up to the Chum Kyu stage, well into the Chum Kyu stage, and I probably still had a year to go before I was going to get up to Buji. Kuksul is very linear in my mind in terms of the way you're facing your opponent and the movement back and forth and attacking and defending. It relies on a lot of kicks for your initial attacks to set up your combinations. You know, Wushu was not combat oriented, obviously, but you had to learn how to move in different ways that you didn't move before. It challenged you for your flexibility, your coordination, your leg strength, low stances. Then Wing Chun was very interesting because the simultaneous attack and defense was not a type of coordination that is innate. It was challenging. I loved the fact that it was very awkward and very hard for me to do at first.
At this point, looking back at your whole life, what does it mean to you? What does martial arts mean to you? What sort of relationship do you have with it? Even if you're not training right now,
yeah.
What's that like?
My love and enthusiasm for martial arts has never changed throughout my whole life. I've always respected it and loved the training process, no matter what martial art it is. You know, I always thought about maybe I should do some traditional karate, like maybe some traditional Okinawan karate, because I've never trained that, and that would be like a cool thing to learn, you know? But at this point in my life, you know, having all these surgeries, back surgery, leg surgery, elbow surgery, shoulder surgery, you know, and waking up stiff and in pain, to me, martial arts, the way it fits into my life now, has more to do with longevity and taking care of my body, harnessing my energy and being able to figure out how to take care of my joints and my health as a whole so that I can continue to do what I love to do for the longest period of time. And as I get older, thoughts of, you know, doing more Tai Chi or Qigong come into play, you know, which may not be combat applicable, you know, but it definitely is health applicable and still keeps me connected to martial arts. I've also thought about maybe possibly going and signing up and doing some BJJ. I've always liked Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've never been, I'm the first to admit that of all my martial arts training, grappling is my weakest, you know, aspect of martial arts. So it'd be nice to go in and strengthen that up a little bit. But again, I don't want to put my body in jeopardy, like, and have any more surgeries or pop a knee out of socket or do any of that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's more about staying healthy and being able to continue to do what I love doing, which is also playing hockey and training as long as I possibly can. So my love for martial arts will never change, but what I'm able to do realistically as I get older is obviously changing. And that's a hard fact to face. If I could go back, I would completely change everything that I did in terms of physical fitness and conditioning back then. I wouldn't lift heavy weights. I would do all calisthenics. More like a gymnast. Okay. Any regrets in terms of some of the stuff that like you had, or injuries and everything like that, or is that kind of just all part of your story? I mean, are there regrets? I don't think so. I mean, it's just it comes with the territory, right? I mean, I worked hard, I played hard, you know, I went at it, you know, and I broke bones and tore ligaments, and that's just the way it goes, you know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I have regrets, but it definitely sucks having to deal with the aftermath of that stuff, because what they don't tell you when you're young, in your 20s, you could tear a ligament, or you could strain a joint or sprain something, you know what I mean? And you wait a couple days and you can go back and start training again. Your body heals up quick. But what they don't tell you is 20 years later, that same injury is going to come back to haunt you. So I'm dealing with all that now.
Thank you for doing this, Eric.
Absolutely, Gabe.
It's good to see you, and
Yeah.
you're for sure going to start training again. We'll figure out the knee and all that.
Yeah, it'll
yeah.
happen at some point for sure.
Well, yeah. All right. Thank you, brother.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. We're good.